Hello and welcome to a very exciting episode of Real Estate Renovators, the business advisory show for real estate professionals. I'm Chanell and this is Rex.
Hi, Chanell.
I'm so excited about today's guest, Rex.
I'm not as excited about you as today's guest. We may have had a last minute cancellation, so we're doing a quick fill-in, but I think it's going to be potentially knowledgeable.
I think so too. And look, I could sit here and list all of this individual's awards and accolades, but if I did that, I fear it would take up the entire episode, Rexy.
I don't think there's that many accolades.
Look, there's quite a number of them.
There's a few.
But look, I don't want to overinflate this particular person's ego.
Definitely doesn't want to inflate this ego.
I'd like to welcome our next guest, Mr. Rex Afrasiabi.
I'm the guest.
Today, what we're going to be covering is a series of most asked real estate questions, real estate legal questions, might I add. So when it comes to setting up a business, potentially employee contracts, questions like, can you offer an agent a commission only? Yeah. You know, what illegal implications do we have? And these are questions that no doubt you get asked a lot. So what's the reason?
Q&A will frequently ask questions for lawyers.
Almost like a cheat sheet that people can refer back to when they've got, say, a legal predicament happening, that there is an answer that they might not have readily available. They can refer back to this incredible episode with my big brother as the guest. Let's get started. The first question I want to ask, Rexy, I'm a real estate agent. I want to open up my own office. What's the right structure for me?
Something I honestly get asked all the time, and I get accountants or the estate agents go to the accountants and give me, this is what my accountants advise me I should do. In my opinion, most estate agents should have two arms to their businesses and two structures. The sales arm of the business should be a straight company. So it's not in your name, it's a company. A company is a separate legal entity. It can get sued, it can have employees, it can have its own tax liabilities, etc. That way, if something goes wrong, it's not on you, it's on the company. However, with companies, you pay a lot of capital gains tax. There's no discounts. If you had a trust set up, you get a 50% discount. Half the capital gains tax goes by just having a trust. So the property management arm of your business, which is the value of it, everyone's going to sell your rent roll at some stage, maybe come to you to sell, that should be in a trust. If you've got partners, a unit trust. If you don't have partners, a discretionary family trust. So in essence, you're having a sales business in a company and your property management in a trust. It gives you a level of asset protection within your own business. So if something goes wrong in sales, underquoting, and you get a fine from Consumer Affairs or misdescription, there's a lot of risks that can happen in sales. It doesn't affect your property management arm, your rent roll. So it gives you this protection. You can also, got a gun agent, make them a partner of the sales business without giving away equity or value in your property management arm because they may not be able to afford it.
That makes complete sense.
But so many people don't do it.
And so if I'm entering into my real estate business with partners, what sort of partnership agreement would I need?
I really think it's really paramount you have a detailed partnership agreement for real estate. I see so many partnership agreements, shareholders agreement, unit holders, depends on your structure, what it is. This agreement that's not tailored for real estate agents. So it doesn't talk about what happens if one of those estate agents loses their license, or if someone wants to sell, what's the agreed multiplier? So estate agents know it could be like a 3 multiples of rent roll. You don't want to keep it broad, say it's got to go to a valuation and not know where you sit, because you might get 4 different valuations that come with 4 different things, especially when it comes to a sales business. So your partnership agreement should be tailored for you, so you know exactly what the value of your partner's interests are if someone wants to sell, and have mechanisms in place to protect you. So if someone's doing the wrong thing, how to get them out. If someone wants to come and buy the whole business, there's a mechanism so one junior partner doesn't hold up the whole process. And then things like decision making, etc. It should be really tailored for you and your partners, and your rule book. Hopefully it just sits there and collects dust. You never have to worry about it, but you've got something to fall back on.
I want to move on to some employee questions, Rex.
Of course you do.
I get asked these a lot. So actually I want to use it as a cheat sheet for me to refer back to when I get asked these questions.
Okay.
Can I employ someone on a commission-only basis?
Yes. But there's requirements around it.
What are they?
So to be a commission-only basis, you can't just employ it. It's got to be at minimum at level 2. There's a real estate industry award, and you've got to be compliant with the real estate industry award.
And level 2 is after 12 months of employment?
After 12 months of employment. They've got to have 12 months of employment. then they can be commission only, but their commission only has to be in writing as well. You can't just say you're commission only, so you should put documented in writing, and they need to make still the minimum threshold amounts.
And what happens if they don't?
Top it up or take them off commission only.
What about independent contractors? What's the difference between hiring someone as commission only or an independent contractor?
Independent contractor, they've got to have their own full license to do. So the main reason I would suggest a client do independent contractors as opposed to commission only is things like payroll tax. So you can structure your independent contractor agreements in a way where they go on your authority with you because they've got a full license, and then they invoice the vendor and they get paid from your trust account, not through your office. That will get around payroll tax because they're not part of your, it won't go through your accounts.
And by payroll tax, you mean you don't need to pay them superannuation, leave?
Payroll tax, anything you make over in Victoria, all your employees that combine, if it's over $750,000, they pay 5% to the Victorian government. In New South Wales, 1.2.
Interesting. Really big question that comes up a lot, Rex. How enforceable are non-competes?
Yeah.
And I want to add to that, if I have an employee that signed an employment contract that has an enforceable non-compete, but I can't find that physical copy of their employment contract, does it still stand?
I'll answer the second one first because it's an easier answer. No, if you can't find a signed employment contract, it doesn't stand. There's a real recent case, Supreme Court case about it, that there was two employees, they found they'd done the wrong thing. One had a signed employment contract, so the court said, yep. There was all this evidence that, yeah, he would have signed it, but we can't find it. And the employer said, I probably would have signed it, I can't find it. The court said, we're never going to imply a restraint unless there's a signed agreement. So if you don't have a signed agreement, it won't stand. You can't enforce a restraint. Back to your first question though, restraints. Yes, they are enforceable, provided to protect the legitimate interests of the employer, not broadly. So a restraint that, hey, don't go work for 20 kilometers in real estate, it's not going to really stack up. But a condition that says, don't go contacting my landlords, don't go contacting my vendors, my database will stack up. The second part to all of the restraints questions, and what we deal with a lot, is what's the damages? If I've employed you and you've done the wrong thing and you've gone and taken I'll say property management because it's easier, it's more value to it. It's a target. So if you were my property manager, you leave, there was a 6-month restraint not to target my database. It was enforceable. You go and do the wrong thing, take my rent roll. If I go to court and I sue you, the court will say, yes, that restraint's enforceable. However, because there's no relationship between me and the landlord, so a landlord can leave me at any time. There's no term on an authority with a landlord, and your restraint was 6 months only, they will award me 0.5 multiple of the recurring revenue, which is nothing compared to what the market value of the rent roll is. So the market value for a typical rent roll is about 3.5 multiplier. They'll give me 0.5. Couple of very recent cases on this, that's exactly what happened. Restraint was enforceable. Restraint was only for 6 months, so they gave him a 0.5 multiplier. To get around that, you have an agreed damages. The employer and employee agree that if you breach this, you pay me a 3 multiplier of the rent roll you've taken, because that will become enforceable in front of a judge. Because judges don't take the view, they don't accept a 3 multiplier unless it's in the agreement.
How can they prove that you have been soliciting clients? Does there need to be a text message to show that you're soliciting potential landlords or vendors to you?
There's evidence can come in so many different ways. It doesn't necessarily be soliciting. If you've downloaded data and taken it before you've left, that could be sufficient to run and get an injunction to prevent you from doing that. So you don't necessarily need to wait for a solicitation to happen. If someone wants to leave, I'd always suggest getting them to having a post-employment undertaking sign to saying, if you're my employee and you leave, here's a letter that reconfirms what's in your employment agreement, nothing more, and some of the duties under law, like fiduciary duties of an employee. Please sign here. If you don't sign, it gives me an indication that why aren't you signing? This is what you've already signed before. If you're not signing, my alarm bell should be ringing.
If I am a director of a real estate agency right now and I'm watching this and I think, oh my God, I haven't had my employees sign I can't find physical copies of my employees' contracts. Can I now ask them to re-sign them?
You can and you should.
And can they decline signing it?
They can. There is ways around that and you negotiate it through.
Other than the standard things, Rexy, what are some really key elements business owners can implement to protect their business?
Protect their business. I think the first thing they should always, independence. I see so many independents that don't protect their brand. So a simple trademark doesn't cost much, doesn't and last for 10 years. Trademark your brand. If you're an independent real estate agent and you haven't trademarked your brand, you're doing something wrong.
How do you go about that trademarking?
Lodge an application for a trademark. You can get a response within 48 hours, and once you get an indication it's going to be approved, and then once it's approved, it lasts 10 years, and you just renew it every 10 years.
And what does that trademark do?
No one else can. So McDonald's is trademark. No one can go set up a McDonald's and sell burgers. So Ray White is trademark, Harcourt's is trademark, Barry Player, all the big franchise groups are trademarked in there. Marty Fox has trademarked his name, for example, but some of the smaller agencies don't, and that's one of the first things they should do is trademark. If you're going to run an agency, make sure no one else can go steal your name.
Yeah.
Another thing they should really do and they don't do is protect their commissions. They work so hard for their commissions, but 9 times out of 10, they don't have a caveat clause in their authorities.
What's that?
So it gives the agency a right to lodge a caveat on the property. If I've sold your property and you owe me a commission, you charge your property. You give me a right to put a caveat on your property, which means your settlement can't go through until I withdraw my caveat. And I'll only withdraw my caveat once you pay me.
Does that happen quite a bit?
It should. It doesn't. It should. And once you have a caveat clause in your authority and start using it, everyone pays you. Because to fight a caveat costs more sometimes.
On the topic of commissions, Rex, if I'm employed with an agency and I resign, am I entitled to my commissions?
You are entitled to your commissions under the Real Estate Boards. You are entitled to your commissions. So commissions normally split up in different, so there's listings, there's sales, and there's like the management beforehand. So it can be deducted, a reasonable sum can be deducted. You're entitled to what part of the commission you earned whilst employed.
What are your opinions, Rex, on organic rent roll growth as opposed to an acquisition?
I think both are super important. The issue I see anyway with organic growth is probably the best growth you can have because it's your clients, you've nurtured them, and by growing in that rent roll, you've grown your brand. They've come to you for your brand. Problem with that is rent rolls don't make you money until you get to a certain level. So you're making a loss on this growth, this organic. You're building an asset, but you're making a cash flow loss on it. So unless you've got a really big sales business that can help fund it whilst you grow it, you're going to be at a loss. So I think a best strategy is having both. Always have organic growth, always have your BDMs and try to do that organic growth piece, but also acquire, especially if you're starting off. I see a lot of clients when they start a rent roll business to acquire something enough to get so it doesn't cost you a lot of money out of your pocket and then grow it from there. And strategic growth as well and strategic sales. So a valuable rent roll is based on its geographical spread. So if you're from Melbourne to Geelong, it ain't going to be worth much. But if you're based around South Yarra, only around South Yarra, it's going to be worth more. So what smart agencies should do and do is they sell the outskirts. They still grow. They don't reject, that's out of my pocket, I don't want it, because it's valuable to you. So you do take it on, but then as you got 50 over here that's out of your core geographical spread, you sell the 50. You cash in on it, and you focus back on your geographical spread and make something stronger. Not that they're gone, but if you have a massive rent roll, there's less buyers. If you sell 50, 100, 200, 400, there's a lot of buyers out there. Few thousand property managers, not many buyers out there.
Makes sense. And what are the risks involved with purchasing a rent roll, if any?
There's a lot of risk involved, but it's really important you get it right from the outset. So I'd always suggest if you're going to acquire, you have a really strong due diligence process. So you go through the rent roll you're going to acquire and make sure all the bonds are lodged with the authorities. Make sure the actual authorities are signed by all the landowners, not just one of them. Make sure that they're up to date in terms of inspections and the like. And it's all just because if you buy it, you inherit those problems. If it's not right, you don't want it. And you want to be able to go through due diligence. You may have signed a contract, but you can get out of the contract. You don't want to make sure you got to have drippage, which means you're going to lose some properties. Once they come over to you, for whatever reason, they may not like the colours. Whatever the case may be, you may lose some. So you want to make sure, as a buyer, you want the longest retention amount. So as a percentage of the purchase price gets locked up in trust account for a longest period of time. As a seller, it's the reverse. So you've got to meet somewhere in between.
And realistically, if I am negotiating a retention period, I know you mentioned a long retention, but realistically, do you think those properties, the owners of those properties would leave after a longer retention, or do you think realistically they'd leave after, say, 60 days?
If they haven't left within 60 days, I think their statistics will show that they're likely not to. But there's also provisions where if you've got multiple landlords, I think gone are the days where, it's a simple formula of, hey, it's 3 multiple of this whole entire rent roll. I think when you got a geographical spread and you got systems where one landlord could own 10 properties, that's a bigger risk to the purchaser, because if you buy that rent roll, if one landlord leaves, you didn't lose one, you lose 10. So you should be able to renegotiate around that, where you may give a different price for multiple landlords. So if one got 10, you might have given 3.5, you might give for that one landlord 3. And the whole retention might be 3 months, but for that one landlord, 6. So you can work around it.
That makes complete sense. And would you advise on purchasing a larger portfolio or multiple smaller portfolios?
Larger portfolio is easier if you've got the resources to take it on. So if you do have the large resources to take it on, it's easier to do it in one hit. It's one transition from one owner to another. As a smaller portfolios are easier to, I suppose, transact because there's less landlords to satisfy, but then you got to do it multiple times. It's a not waste of resources, but if you can do it in one, do it.
And how do you determine the multiplier of a rent roll?
If you're buying, you want to pay as less as possible. If you're selling, you want to get as high as possible.
Makes complete sense.
Look, you can get bank valuations on it. And, the likes of a Macquarie or Judo now big into space, they'll give you a good multiplier.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for that, Rex. Was it a bit hot over there in the hot seat?
It was really hot in there. I see why some of our guests sweat so much with your hard questions.
I don't know if it's my hard questions or these good looks. Keeping me humble as always. But look, if there was only a few topics that we covered there, but I think if anyone has some, legal
DM, always happy to help. That's all we do. So we're here to help. So both of us, from a recruitment point of view or legal, send us a DM. Happy to get back to you.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Real Estate Renovators.